God is talking. Subscribe.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a look at this book called God is Talking.
Mm.
And, I know you're interested in like spirituality and finding your path, and you've always had questions about, what is heaven? Is heaven real? And
Right.
this book kind of piqued my interest because it's claiming to be this direct dialogue with God.
Okay.
And it's got some interesting takes. Like right off the bat, it's like, forget the Ten Commandments.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You're talking about the Ten Commandments.
Ten Commitments, yeah. That's a very different way to frame it.
Totally. So I'm curious, like, what do you make of that? Commitments over commandments. What does that even mean?
Well, it sounds to me like instead of these kind of like rules that you have to follow, these commandments that you might be punished for if you don't follow them, it's more like this is what we can build together.
Mhm.
It's more of a co-creation.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like a choice versus
Yeah.
like, I'm being told what to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
More about like personal choice and maybe even, empowering in a way because it's like you're choosing this.
Right. Yeah. It's like you're actively participating in your own like spiritual growth.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then it gets into this whole idea like, you are creating your own reality.
Okay.
Like literally every single minute.
Every minute. Wow.
It's like you are creating your reality every minute, the book says. And that just like stopped me in my tracks.
Right, because it makes you think about, well, what am I creating right now? Like, what am I putting out there?
Totally. Like, am I creating the reality that I want, or am I like stuck in some kind of like default mode?
Right, exactly.
And then it goes on to like break down like, okay, well, how do you actually do that? Like, how do you create your reality?
Yeah, how do you do that?
And it talks about these like 3 levels. Like it's your thought, your word, and your deed.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it's not enough to just like think it. You got to actually like speak it and then like back it up with action.
Right. You got to take action. Like, it's one thing to think about, I don't know, going on vacation or something.
Right.
But then actually, like, picking it, planning it, that's a whole nother level.
Right. It's like aligning all those things.
Totally. Aligning it. Yeah, like that.
And so, one thing that really I think will resonate with you is that, you talk about wanting to achieve your goals, right?
Right.
And this book really emphasizes that it's not just about the actions you take, but it's also the thoughts you're thinking and the words you're speaking about those goals.
Oh, interesting.
So if you're constantly like doubting yourself or you're like speaking negatively about your ability to achieve something,
Mm-hmm.
the book suggests that you're actually like hindering your own progress.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like if you're constantly telling yourself you're going to fail, you're probably right.
Exactly. And it's
Hmm.
like, so, and then it gets into this whole thing about like negative thoughts, right? Because like, let's be honest, like controlling our thoughts, that's like a full-time job.
It feels impossible sometimes,
Right.
especially those really like deep-rooted negative ones.
Exactly. And the book even acknowledges this. It's like, yeah, it's tough. But then it offers this like piece of advice that, I don't know, it seemed kind of simplistic to me at first. It's like when you have a negative thought, you literally like tell yourself to think again.
Think it.
Like literally think again.
So are you saying it's like almost like catching yourself in that moment of negativity?
Yes. Like becoming aware of it.
Okay, so it's like a mindfulness thing almost.
And then choosing a different thought.
Yeah. Instead of just letting that negative thought spiral.
Right, exactly. Like interrupting that pattern. And what's interesting is that it reminded me a lot of like cognitive behavioral therapy.
CBT.
Yeah. Have you ever done any CBT?
I've heard of it. I don't know a ton about it though.
So basically, it's a type of therapy where you work on like identifying and changing your thought patterns.
Okay.
So it's like instead of just letting those negative thoughts run wild, you learn how to like challenge them and reframe them.
Oh, interesting. So it's like giving you the tools to kind of like take control of your thoughts.
Exactly. Instead of feeling like you're, a victim to them.
Right. Like you're not just at the mercy of whatever pops into your head. You can actually choose.
Exactly. And that's kind of what this book is getting at too. It's like you have more power than you think.
Okay. Yeah, that's empowering.
Yeah. Okay, so I know you're also like interested in exploring different spiritual paths, right?
Yeah, definitely. Always trying to kind of find my own way.
Totally. And this book dives into that whole idea of like renunciation versus acceptance. Like, does spirituality require you to like give up all your desires and become like this totally detached being?
Right. Like, do you have to renounce everything to be spiritual?
Exactly. Or, is it about accepting like your humanity and all the messy stuff that comes with it.
Right, like the good, the bad, all of it.
Yeah. And this book, it really kind of it questions that whole paradigm. It's like it doesn't necessarily shy away from passion.
Oh, okay.
Like it doesn't say you have to become this like passionless robot.
Oh, that's good, because that doesn't sound very fun.
Right. It's more about like understanding your passions, not judging them, but like seeing them as this like powerful force that can be channeled in a way that aligns with like your higher self.
Okay, so it's more about like directing that passion.
Exactly. Like how can you use that passion to create something good,
Yeah.
to like, make a positive impact on the world?
Right, instead of just like suppressing it or denying it.
Totally. Okay, so get this. There's this one quote that just like jumped out at me. It said, and I'm quoting here, "What you resist persists. What you look at disappears."
What you resist persists. Okay, yeah, I've heard that before.
Have you ever noticed that in your own life? Like the more you try to fight something, the bigger it seems to get?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you try not to think about something, and then all you can think about is that thing.
Exactly. So this book is suggesting that like instead of running away from our fears or our limiting beliefs, we need to like turn and face them. We need to like look at them directly.
Okay, so it's like shining a light on those dark corners instead of just pretending they're not there.
Yes. And that's when the book suggests that's when those fears and those limitations start to lose their power over us.
Okay, that makes sense. Because you're constantly running from something, you never actually get to deal with it.
Exactly. It's like cleaning out a closet. Like you
Oh.
can keep shoving stuff in the back, but eventually you're going to have to confront that mess.
Right. And then once you do, it's like, oh, this wasn't as bad as I thought.
Exactly. Okay, so now let's talk about this whole idea of heaven, right?
Yeah, because you mentioned that earlier. I'm curious.
Because this book makes a bold claim. It's like heaven isn't some far off destination. It's right here, right now.
Right here, right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know about you, but like for me, that's kind of a hard concept to grasp. Like if heaven's already here, why does it feel so elusive?
Right. If it's all around us, why aren't we experiencing it, 24/7?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good question.
And the book suggests that it has to do with our perception of reality. Like we're so used to seeing the world through this lens of like fear and doubt and lack that we miss the perfection that's already present.
Okay. So it's like we're so focused on what's wrong that we don't see what's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like we're so busy looking for problems that we don't even notice the solutions that are right in front of us.
Wow, yeah.
And that's where this whole idea of like shifting our perspective comes in. And the book really emphasizes like the importance of self-awareness. Like,
Yeah.
really paying attention to your thoughts, your beliefs, your actions, because those are the things that are shaping your reality.
So it's like becoming aware of the lens that we're looking through.
Exactly. And then, asking yourself like, is this lens serving me? Or is it time to like clean it up a bit, maybe get a new prescription?
Because if your lens is kind of blurry, you're not going to see the world very clearly.
Exactly. And that's what this book is trying to help us do. It's like a guidebook for like cleaning up our lenses and seeing the world in a whole new light.
Oh, okay. I like that. I'm into that.
Right. So I'm curious, like, what are your initial thoughts on all of this?
Well, I mean, it's definitely a lot to take in, but I think it's really interesting how this book is like reframing these traditional spiritual concepts in a way that feels very like accessible and relatable.
Right. It's not like this like stuffy old school approach.
Yeah. And I especially like the emphasis on personal choice and empowerment. Like we're not just pawns in some cosmic game. We actually have the power to create our own reality.
Right. And that's a really empowering message, I think, especially in a world where it can feel like we're so often at the mercy of external circumstances.
Totally. It's like we have more control than we realize. We just have to tap into it.
Exactly. And this book gives us some tools to do just that.
Okay, cool. I'm curious to dive deeper into these 10 commitments.
Yeah, me too. Because, like, what do those even look like in practice?
Right. Like, how do you actually live by these commitments on a daily basis?
Totally. And how does that tie into this whole idea of, like, experiencing heaven on earth?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Right. So let's get into it. Let's unpack some of these commitments and see what we can discover.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's not always easy, right? To
Yeah.
kind of like shift that perspective.
Totally. So, like, if this heaven on earth is already here, how do we actually, like, shift our perspective to experience it?
Well, this is where the book kind of goes back to that whole like reinterpreting the commandments as commitments thing.
Okay.
And like, for example, remember that first commitment?
Yeah.
Like, you shall love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul.
Yeah, yeah, like really embodying love.
Embodying it. Yeah,
Not just like a feeling, but like a way of being in the world.
exactly. And it's about kind of shifting from that place of fear and judgment of yourself and of others to a place of acceptance and compassion.
Okay, so it's like embodying that unconditional love, the kind that doesn't like keep score or hold grudges.
Right.
But how does that translate into like actually experiencing heaven on earth? I'm still kind of stuck on like, what does that actually look like?
It talks about like aligning your thoughts, your words, and your actions with that love.
Okay.
And it emphasizes that this isn't about earning your way to heaven through good deeds. It's about changing your internal state to recognize that you're already worthy. You're already whole.
So instead of trying to be good enough, we just need to remember that we already are.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a powerful shift. But what about like setting boundaries? Does aligning with love mean I'm just like letting people walk all over me?
Right.
How do we live this way in like the real world?
That's where discernment comes in.
Discern. Okay.
And it talks about not using the name of God in vain. But it interprets that in a really interesting way.
Okay.
It relates it to like understanding the power of your thoughts and your words and like making conscious choices rather than reacting out of habit.
So instead of like yelling at the guy who cuts me off in traffic, which let's be real, I've totally done,
Right.
I like take a breath, remember to like align with love, and maybe send a silent blessing his way.
Precisely.
Okay.
Choosing a higher frequency, even in those like mundane, frustrating moments.
Right.
And that applies to how we treat ourselves too.
Oh, so no more like beating myself up for every little mistake.
Exactly. Remember, it talks about honoring your parents.
Mm-hmm.
It interprets that more broadly as honoring the divine within yourself and in all beings.
It's like recognizing that spark of divinity in everyone, even that guy who cut me off in traffic.
Yes. And it means extending that same compassion to yourself, recognizing you're doing the best you can with the awareness you have in each moment.
Okay, so it takes the pressure off needing to be perfect to get it right all the time.
Yeah.
But what about when life throws those curveballs? Like, what about when it feels impossible to even think a positive thought, let alone like live from a place of love?
Well, the book acknowledges that it's not always easy.
Right.
Personal transformation is challenging. And
Yeah.
it talks about remembering the Sabbath.
Okay.
And not just as like a religious observance, but as a reminder to step back from the everyday hustle and reconnect with your spiritual essence.
So like taking time for practices that help us tune into that deeper part of ourselves.
Okay,
Like
exactly.
meditation or being in nature or even just like listening to music that uplifts us. It's
Yes.
like hitting the reset button on our consciousness.
Yes, exactly.
And this reminds me of that quote, "What you look at disappears." What does that mean in the context of like self-observation?
It suggests that by bringing awareness to those negative thoughts, those limiting beliefs, those reactive patterns, we begin to dismantle their power over us.
So not trying to like push those negative thoughts away, but like shining a light on them.
Yes.
I imagine it's kind of like holding a magnifying glass up to a spider web. Like suddenly you see all the intricate details, but you also realize how fragile it is.
Yes. And as we continue to observe these patterns with awareness,
Yeah.
we naturally start to make different choices.
Choices that are more aligned with love and our highest selves.
Exactly.
Okay, this is all starting to make sense. But what about those like big no-nos? The things that we're often told are like sins or moral failings. Does this book like address those at all?
Remember, it's about commitments, not commandments.
Right.
It's not about blindly following rules out of fear.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the underlying principles and choosing actions that align with your highest self.
So for example, instead of thou shalt not steal, it's about understanding that like taking something that isn't yours creates a separation from abundance and generosity.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that everything you need is already available to you. So there's no need to take from others.
Yeah.
And that applies to all areas of life. Relationships, finances, our time and energy.
So it's about coming from a place of wholeness.
Yes.
Understanding that like we're all connected, which naturally leads to like more ethical and fulfilling choices.
Exactly.
But what I'm gathering is this isn't about like becoming some perfect saintly being.
No.
It seems like this book really embraces the full spectrum of human experience.
It does.
Even the messy parts.
Absolutely. It emphasizes that you can't truly know love or compassion or joy without also understanding their opposites.
Okay.
Even our shadows hold a valuable lesson, a piece of the wholeness that we're seeking.
It's like embracing the darkness as part of what makes the light so beautiful.
Yes, and that includes embracing our imperfections, our mistakes, even our failures.
Okay.
The book reminds us that there's no way to mess up this journey of self-discovery, that every experience ultimately leads us closer to the truth of who we are.
It's incredibly freeing knowing that there's no judgment or condemnation,
Right.
only opportunities for learning and growth.
And as we explore these ideas, experiment with these commitments, we naturally experience a shift in our reality,
Yeah.
a glimpse of that heaven on earth.
Like we're slowly lifting the veil of illusion to see the beauty and love that were always present.
Yes, and as the book reminds us, the journey is part of the destination.
Okay.
Savoring each moment, embracing the ups and downs, trusting that we're always guided toward our highest good.
It's like we're all on this incredible adventure, and the map is within us the whole time.
Yes.
This book definitely takes us on a wild ride through some profound concepts. You know, it's funny, when we first started talking about this book and these, 10 commitments, I have to admit, a part of me was kind of resistant.
Yeah, I get that. It's like, can we really just swap out commandments for commitments? And it'd be like, hunky-dory.
Right. Like, it seemed almost, I don't know, too easy. But the more we've talked about it, the more I'm realizing, it's not about making things easy. It's about approaching spirituality from a place of, empowerment and personal choice. It's like we're not just following rules out of fear. We're actively participating in our own growth.
And it's not about throwing out the old rule book entirely. It's more like reinterpreting it, you know?
Yeah.
Looking at those classic teachings through a new lens.
Exactly. That whole thing about loving God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. It's like, yeah, that sounds kind of intense, but when you really break it down, it's about embodying love in everything you do.
It's like choosing love as your default setting, even when it's hard, even when you'd rather, scream at that guy who cut you off.
Right. It's about taking that deep breath and choosing a higher frequency. And it's not just about being nice to other people. It's about being kind to ourselves too.
Exactly. No more beating ourselves up for every little mistake. It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress, and every experience, even the messy ones, is part of the journey.
And that's a really freeing thought, isn't it? Knowing that there's no way to mess up this journey of self-discovery, that every step, even the missteps, are leading us closer to the truth of who we are.
It's like we're all on this grand treasure hunt, and the map is within us the whole time. We just have to learn how to read it.
And that's where this whole idea of self-awareness comes in. It's like we have to be willing to shine a light on those dark corners of our minds, to look at our thoughts, our beliefs, our patterns, without judgment.
It's about getting curious about those things we'd rather avoid, Like, why do I keep reacting this way? What's the lesson here?
And as we start to observe those patterns, we begin to understand them. And that understanding gives us the power to make different choices.
Choices that are more aligned with our highest selves, with the love and peace and joy that we're all seeking.
And as we make those choices, our reality begins to shift. We start to experience those glimpses of heaven on earth that this book keeps talking about.
It's like we're slowly peeling back the layers of illusion to reveal the beauty and the love that were always present.
Right. It's not about creating something new. It's about recognizing what was already there all along. We just couldn't see it before.
And that's the real magic of this journey, isn't it? It's not about becoming some perfect enlightened being. It's about remembering who we truly are.
And that journey, that remembering, it's an ongoing process. It's not something we achieve overnight. It's a lifelong adventure of exploration and discovery. And I think that's what makes it so exciting.
It's about savoring each moment, embracing the ups and downs, knowing that we're always guided, always supported, even when we can't see the path ahead.
It's like we're all walking each other home. So if you're feeling a little lost, a little uncertain, remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together. And that, my friends, is a truly heavenly thought. So until next time, keep asking those big questions, keep seeking, keep diving deep, and most importantly, keep the conversation going. I am not just